Boom. We are alive, Bear family. Great to see everybody again. Everything looks great, aside from the macro story, which, as if you know me personally, I've talked about ad nauseum. But we try to stay focused on the signal of the markets and ignore most of the noise. It is less important than most people think. The dynamics of supply and demand are significantly more important than the macro perspective. So if the people are buying, it doesn't really matter what the rest of the world is going on. So we're going to start here by taking a look at the frame we were sharing with Bitcoin, which is on the chart now. This is what we believe to be an accumulation channel. There's, again, a few reasons we've looked at: the selling climax, the spring, the secondary test here. And more recently, we've been following these last two trading ranges within the box and hypothesizing this next move to around 28 grand. It hasn't happened yet. I thought it would happen already, but we've been building more of a cause here and for multiple other tokens as well. So it's not just Bitcoin, but many of the other altcoins are building a position or a cause here. So there's a few really key elements that I want to point out before we move on. First off, this nice chunk of supply that came in and this big move up into the top of the trading range with a lot of power, bigger than any of the previous moves throughout the trading range, and with basically no exhaustion. And the first little bit of exhaustion that we did get here was noticed by the continual declination of the supply, and the LPS was not more volume coming in. If all of a sudden at this point we had, let's say, a big supply line start to come in, that would have been a bad sign, and we would have been probably a change in character away from this. But very low supply LP for our last point of supply. And now I think we're going to get the upthrust into what will be the SOS. Now, this next move is important because if it's not the SOS and it turns into an upthrust and then afterwards starts to distribute back into the trading range really quickly, that's usually a pretty bad sign that you are in fact in a distributional range instead of an accumulation range. So that would change the entire thesis to this range and would say, oh, quick, get out. But there are, again, other reasons why I believe that this is a bull. It won't be a secular bull market. We're not going to see any 100x's, I don't think, anytime soon. But we're going to see moves up to previous highs potentially, or pretty close to it. So with Bitcoin, I could see us easily going somewhere between the $38,000 to $48,000 range and testing up here and doing something like this. Boom, testing up, maybe even hitting something like 56,000, having a temporary distribution, getting some secondary tests, and then doing what we saw back in 2019 through 2020, which is retest this range. And then it will validate the long-term thesis that I had since we started hitting this first spot, is that effectively what we will see is a much larger reaccumulation channel that's taking place here, much like 2017 and much like the 2020 bull market. So that's the next 90 days could bring us as high as like some 50 grand or something. So it'll be a wild ride. Most people aren't bullish enough yet based off this, but this next step is so important. Because if again we turn around here and we come back down and break through 24, we could be all the way back down to the bottom of the trading range very, very quickly. Again, I don't suspect that's the case just because of how much supply came in through this spring here and the market-wide fear and sentiment of, oh, crypto's over, blah, 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 regulations. You know, we've been going up in price on a ton of negative news. And this is another indicator, is when you are counteracting crappy news with bullish price. When there's bullish price continuation on top of crappy news, it's an indication of a very strong market and that the character has changed again. So I do suspect that this will be the case for around another 80 days, give or take. We're going to have to follow it step by step. But there are reasons why we felt that was the case, and it was because there was early indicators of big movements outside of the box for tokens like Magic, which had already completed an accumulation range. So I haven't labeled this one off. Maybe I could do that as well, but we would start with the same process here. We would go through, grab our text box, go our first preliminary support. And then we'll copy this down here, and then this is likely our type of our selling climax. Again, you can see the selling climax down at the bottom here is indicated. And again, remember guys, if you're doing Wyckoff theory and you're only looking at the price structure within the trading range and you're not looking at the supply, you're not doing it right. I know it's so the supply down here is important. Here's the selling climax. Notice this big chunk of supply that came in. Oh, it stays stuck on the screen. That's interesting. I didn't even know you could do that. So selling climax down here at the bottom, and you can see this big chunk of supply that came in at that moment. You had your automatic rally that rushed us up above to the top of the box here. Now, during our conversation that we had with Todd, you could make the argument that this was the automatic rally and that this was the first kind of portion of the trading range, and that this was a really large sign of strength right at the early point as well. So I generally like to think that the automatic rally makes the top of the range, not the first single reaction. Again, the other thing that's a key indicator here, if we ignore that, is look at the price and the supply. Supply came into the automatic rally that was equal to the selling climax. That to me signals that this would be the automatic rally. And then from here, you had your secondary test. Now what's interesting here is your secondary test actually had alignment with your primary support again, and something kind of similar, another secondary test right down near the selling climax, followed by your spring. And your spring here, important to note, a huge amount of supply came in right afterwards, which created the first kind of test. Now, when you see these, sometimes they're closer together. Sometimes the spring and the test are basically indistinguishable from one another. Here, we saw a low volume spring for fetch. I hate that the letters don't move. That's super annoying. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to fix that. But yeah, down at the bottom here, with low volume and then this spring, a large amount of supply came in, declining supply. And then once we increased on the outside, once we went down that first large accumulation pattern effectively throughout the trading range, we broke up and went outside of the box on a continuation pattern here. And I suspect that that's what's going to happen with Bitcoin. Effectively with Bitcoin, we are right here at the top of the trading range, and we have yet to break out, but we're going to break out, hit around 40 to 50 grand, and we're going to move down. So this is magic that we just looked at here. I'll have to figure out what's wrong with the anchored text. Maybe it's anchored text. Text wrap border. I don't know why it would do that. Yeah, it's so strange. I'll have to, maybe there's different types of text. Anchored text, just text. Okay, there we go. That should work. Perfect. Now I was wondering what was going on. Awesome. So just as another example, let's take a look at fetch here. Fetch, a lot of the same characteristic supply signatures that we wanted throughout the trading range, and super powerful afterwards. I'm not saying that Bitcoin's going to be this powerful, but just for a second, let's marvel at the excitement of this. Okay, let's go through the process one more time, just because it's always good to make sure we are learning things correctly. Here, beginning part of the trading range, highlighted by a significant supply coming into the market. That's our selling climax. Let's start there effectively, because the selling climax gives us that volume and supply signature that we want to use to be able to effectively mark off where we are. So this is our selling climax. Go ahead and do this with a bunch of the charts you guys find. Here again, you could make an argument this time for the automatic rally being right here because of the significant amount of supply that came in right after the selling climax. And this is sometimes the case. This is one of the things we looked at with Todd, is the idea that you were following a top line supply here, and then this was your second point. Here's your secondary test, your spring, low volume spring down near the bottom. A huge amount of buying pressure came in, drove us up, came back down to test the top of the range, and that this was actually not only did it jump across the creek, but it went into SOS mode, had a backup, and then look at these massive moves that have come out for fetch since this bull market started, of 600%, 700% at the very peak there. These are not insignificant sums. What is this? Almost a 10x from the very bottom of the spring. So if that's not a bull market, I don't know what people think a bull market is, but to me, this is a bull market. So these are the strength players. They're way ahead of Bitcoin in terms of their movement, but just like Bitcoin, I think it's going to hit the top of the range. I think it's going to hold above the range. I think it's going to test previous areas of resistance, which for fetch, we're not into new all-time highs, but damn, that is a huge move and back into previous territory of all-time highs, right? So for Bitcoin, to me, this looks like 40K effectively, right? So I think we're going to go to around 40K for Bitcoin. There's a few reasons, again, why we do this kind of broad spectrum market analysis. You can do it by looking at the total market exchange. We're above the trend line. But I like to see the strength in the early movers, and there are some of them. Who else did I want to look at? Matic is another one of these who appear to be breaking outside the box on a rising gradient bottom. We could see really powerful moves for Matic here, where we go up to previous all-time highs potentially to test it. I don't know if we go back and then come back down, which is the most likely, and build support here. Because again, I don't believe this is a full-on bull market cycle. Yeah, okay, so let's take a look. Look here, it looks interesting here too. It's all the way back at the top of its box, or about to touch here. It's usually better just for, don't draw, like the rising gradient bottom I drew there with Matic is a very special case. I would try not to generally get people to look at horizontal trading range, rising gradient bottoms, because they can be very deceiving. Can turn into a distributional pattern very quickly. So take a look here at Chainlink, a nice accumulation through the trading range. I suspect we will revisit around $18 probably for Link, based off the similar concept. So again here, Ape token, Gala, all in the middle of the trading range. This is why we made an argument for the primary support as well, where you see significant supply come in here, and then the selling climax secondarily for the automatic rally. So interestingly enough, when we chatted with Todd, you could make the argument that primary support is here, but and that this is the automatic rally down here. But I suspect that this is the automatic rally in full, effectively, where you have this declining supply line starting from here as the rally. Boom, boom, boom. So practice these trading ranges, again, not just focused on the structure itself, but really noticing where the supply signature is. If you have really big supply signatures like we saw with Bitcoin coming into the spring here, that's usually a good indicator, alongside that fear in the market as well, like, oh, Bitcoin's over, all these funds are getting washed out, some of the biggest players are actually frauds. This is a great indicator, I think, for a spring. And then this move here, I think this is what we're going to do. We're going to go boom, straight into 29, 30 grand. We're going to get a nice bull flag here. I stand by this, and then boom, up to around 42K, pretty much in one solid move. And then by this point, people will be getting worried that Bitcoin's going to 100 grand and that they've missed out, and the new narrative will start to switch, and you'll see a huge amount of supply come in here equal to the original spring, and that will be the big players exiting the positions that they took all the way down here. So that's what the future is going to look like, as far as I can tell. It will do this regardless of the macro story. I think it's one of the most important parts here is to remember that the supply story and demand story is so much more important than the macro inflation. And now the Fed story is important. Their ability to print money is definitely important, especially when you're at the peak of a market pretty much in all aspects of all markets. Their printing represented the peak. But here there's much less leverage and debt in this ecosystem because it's more volatile. People are less likely to do things like take out those loans. And a lot of those loans got wiped out almost instantly way back here in the spring of November. So it's probably some pretty blue sky sailing for a little bit here, continuing going forward. I don't see anything that's changed this thesis yet. If we wanted to, we could look on the shorter time frame. You can see that there's a potential for a reaccumulation arm taking place right here as well. something like this would be a nice backup as well, right out the back of the box of the previous trading range. So this is always a little difficult, because when you're in a bull market, you might want to think that this is actually a distributional range. And it is, because we went down, but only to the LPS. But we are in a new we are in a new character of the market. So even this would have been a warning sign to basically get out of the market just prior to November, because it would have meant we're coming all the way back down to $17,000 or $16,000 potentially. So knowing that we're in a bull market will help you alleviate these intermediary structures, which do look distributional, and they are on the 45-minute, but they're rather irrelevant in this bigger frame of picture, because when you look out at the 6-hour, you can see we're right in the backup of the micro SOS, and could be fully on our way to the extension. So I don't see anything that's broken down here on the 1 hour. It still looks like a really clean reaccumulation. You've had 2 nice tests here. I don't see an increase in the supply signature either. So on the 6-hour here, you'll remember we were following this the fact that the supply line has constantly been decreasing. Constantly decreasing supply line. And then right after the LPS, a nice quick increase. But also important, again, here is the fact that we've been decreasing since this start of the new SOS has taken place. So if all of a sudden we saw a supply and sale come in that exceeded the previous upthrust, wouldn't be a bad thing per se, as long as we didn't have a big reduced price reaction. But for now, everything looks very, very bullish. I think that narrative will continue. Okay, well, I could take some questions, I guess. Yeah, let's do that for a little bit. We'll take some thoughts and questions. Maybe we'll look at a few of the charts that you guys are interested in. So let's swing over to the screen here, and I'll take a look at your guys' questions. I'm going to have to refresh the question screen here. So just give me 1 sec. Nice, lots of good mornings. Yes, forage. Well, the markets are quiet and winter is around. Arcane bull. Yep. Bears are, it's a good place to be. China seems to be important. Yeah, again, we'll ignore the larger macro news. It's basically unimportant at the moment. The supply is drastically reduced. XRP next month hit $3 I don't know if it would hit $3. So one of the fun ways to do this is, let's go and look at, well, first off, let's start here. So the crypto fear and greed index is looking like it's in an accumulation with the final stages of its backup. This almost actually even looks like a bull flag. I swear, it's so, like, it's uncanny how how this translates at the particular moment. I think this is a beautiful setup. The fact that it looks like you're getting a bull flag in between greed and fear is just an awesome sentiment. But let's go to CoinGecko, our favorite place to look at cryptos, and take a look at XRP. So XRP has, let's see, there's 100,000, there's 100 million, it's 100 billion tokens, total supply 99 billion out there, and 50 billion. So half of the supply is circulating, and at a market cap at $20 billion. So it's probably way overvalued as it is. I can't imagine XRP being worth $20 billion. I'm sorry. That doesn't make much sense to me. I've never liked Ripple, but that's not that you maybe couldn't make money off it, especially like in 2017, you couldn't make a shit ton of money off of it. But when you've got a $20 billion market cap at something, there's just not a lot of room for upside. You know, that's why things like Magic were more exciting, or even Gala Games, you know, like at $1 billion or something, you know. I'm pretty sure you'd need need a lot of use in XRP to really justify that. And that's then a 40 billion at fully diluted. So that means once all the tokens hit the market. Now, I'm not sure how the distributional cycle for XRP works, so I may not be the best to speak on that, but I believe it's just a bunch of guys who own the token and then sell it as they wish. So I don't know how that vesting schedule would work or not, but it doesn't sound like a lot of fun to want to hold on to a token that just has so much supply. It just in general, one of the things that's fun about asymmetric venture capital is like you're really only looking to invest X amount. Here with XRP, the risk to reward, I don't know, it wouldn't fit my thesis. But we could look at the charts here and just focus on maybe what the technicals say for a second instead. XRP. First off, it is a technical thing to also look at the circulating supply effectively as well. So it definitely looks like it's finding a trading range of some kind. We're all the way back down to 2020 lows. Not a big amount of interest here. Yeah, you're right. I guess if there was some good news, I could see maybe a return to like 85 cents, but I wouldn't aim any higher than that. Like even with Fetch and Magic right now, they've returned to about halfway of the previous market cycle, and they're way ahead of XRP right now. That's for sure. But pretty quiet in the trading range here too. Normally you want to look for leaders, something that's moved significantly already, and you just don't see that with XRP. Now again, it could be bearing news, but I'm not a big fan. I wouldn't touch it. And the fully diluted market cap at $40 billion just sounds atrocious. I mean, what's the market cap of what's Fortnite market cap? Right, that would be a fun question. Fortcoin. There's no Fortnite token, guys. That's not what I'm trying to figure. Epic Games developer Fortnite is said to be raised $1 billion in this new funding round. Okay, it jumps to 29 billion. Okay, so there you go. Fortnite Epic Games jumps to $29 billion valuation. So saying that XRP is worth as much as Fortnite is probably wrong. I feel pretty confident that that's probably wrong. But maybe XRP, I don't know. So this is the thing, you never know what the future holds, but I wouldn't place my bet on it. I'm more interested in a video game at a $10 to $100 million valuation going to a $29 billion valuation rather than a $20 billion company trying to go to $1 trillion or something. It just doesn't make as much sense. Not from my particular strategy or set. Okay, there's another question I saw up here as well. BTC RSI price going down, is that bearish? Okay, and someone asked about RNDR. I'll take a look at that. So let's take a look at Bitcoin. This is not what you would expect per se. So I'm going to explain myself here when I say that, because it's always unusual when things happen that you don't know what would happen, because just another way of saying, hey, we were wrong. That's usually what a surprise is, right? It's just something you didn't expect. So something outside of your ability to predict. And let's jump the RSI back on here. Okay, so currently right now, what you would be talking about is the divergence between the micro SOS and the SOS that we're printing right now, which is the RSI here and the divergence. So a lot of people look at this and think, oh, well, this is bearish divergence, and you're correct. When you have increased price and reduced RSI over time, this is bearish. This would be a bearish change of character. But in the beginning of a bull market, when you have a change of character like this, the market is designed itself to deceive the lower players' interests effectively. So even though this is bearish today, it's very likely that we're going to get bought. We're going to go into the oversold territory again, and we're going to stay into oversold territory for another big chunk of time. We may even come down and test one more time and do it like this, and we'll stay oversold, and the price will go even higher, and then you might see a big drop effectively. But I think we're gonna get and hit this. It's like my little owl friend. Yeah, so I think we're gonna get into the oversold or overbought territory and stay in the overbought territory, and then what you'll see is of this whole price structure will have basically a massive divergence on it, where this high, and it'll get oversold will be just a little bit higher than the oversold over here. I don't think we'll see a reset on the daily probably for quite some time. We've already reset on the 1 hour effective just the other day, basically, with the LPS. Boom. Multiple times throughout that trading range, we reset on the RSI for the 1 hour. And on the 6 hour, we basically reset entirely on that LPS, which is awesome. So here, I think we're going to jump up even higher, probably into like some 90 range again. And that's when Bitcoin will be at around 29 grand. So the RSI can be very confusing in the early stages. A lot of people, again, will think that this is a distributional trading range. They'll be like, oh, it's a head and shoulders. Don't be deceived. It's a bull trap. But they've missed the most important part, the macro story. Once this macro story spring and test changes, everything out here that looks bearish is basically a redundant thing to screw over the retail investor or the short-term trader effectively. We learned that during the 2020 bull market cycle. It's just how many times there looked like something was distributional that instantaneously turned around and went back into previous or new highs. So I suspect that will be the case. What's bearish today is not necessarily bearish in its entirety. Do you think we'll retest the bottom in the next few months? Maybe. We may not come back down that low, but there's definitely a reason to believe that we could. Some future scare. Over $90 billion from China, maybe trying to counteract U.S. rate hikes. Most of the inflation isn't coming from a lot of it was coming from disruptions in the supply chain, and I guess the destruction of the ability to buy oil and energy cheaply. Once your energy bill goes up, literally everything goes up. It's impossible for it not to be more expensive. So makes it very difficult. Any thoughts on Digibyte? I'll take a look at Digibyte and FTM. So that's render, and those the last three we'll take a look at. We'll start with whatever RNDR here. RNDR, Tether. Oh, hey, look at that. Beautiful find. I know actually some of you are trading this in the Arcane Bear Den because I remember seeing this. But this is awesome. Again, once you broke out of the trading range here, and I would put this as the selling climax. This is your first automatic rally. Hard to say, something like this. And this is, you know what's interesting? We've seen this more than once before, where you actually had basically what appears to be an inverse spring. This is usually the sign of a huge amount of momentum, and often they can be categorized as a rising gradient bottom. They might have looked at it like this. So this is your automatic rally, and here is your spring, and then your first SOS, and then this was your shakeout and terminal shakeout. So these ones are a little bit harder to read, but the fact that there's so much upwards momentum out of the trading range right now is awesome. I mean, 200 to 300% looks great. I wouldn't jump in this trade today per se. I would look for a reset on the RSI, although it did reset here. This just doesn't look great yet, and it's so high up. This earlier range, like when you can spot these small accumulation ranges out the back, effectively, these are the nice places to get in, is when you've got these little accumulation ranges starting to take place every few stepping stones upwards. But yeah, here the risk to reward relationship is more difficult. But again, as we saw with Fetch and Magic, once it moved outside the box, it actually went up another 100% even easier. And that might be the case here. I don't know enough about this one to have conviction about why I would want to be in the position to begin with, or why there would be demand, but it looks like it's been powerful so far. FTM, Binance, futures. No, I don't know if I should use the perps, but that will be fine. Oh, hey, look, beautiful. FTM was another one actually that moved outside the box real fast. This is kind of what I thought Gala would do. Yeah, look here. See, this is why these can be so valuable to identify early on. And this is a difficult one too. This is kind of, you can see here, if you've done your homework, why it might be difficult to try to figure out where the range is exactly on this one. But ultimately, it looks like you had a spring right here. or a spring here, low volume spring, a big test, huge supply test. No one wanted FTM for a little while. And then right out the back of this little box here, 150%. I would be careful here. It's probably going to could come back down to this 38 cents area to retest, but it's outside of its trading range, or at least to the top of its previous resistance. You could make the argument that the top of the box is way up here instead of potentially down here, which we've seen before as well. What do you see Gala's price going to at the end of the year? So I'll take a look at Gala. I was hoping Gala would have moved quicker already, so I'm not as excited about the position as I was. There's a huge amount of supply that came in. We did see a nice reach at a final test, so I believe that this is a form of LPS outside with the RSI here touching down into its 27 range. But I think we could very easily go to around 10 cents. I think we'll get a full extension to the top of the trading range. Any higher than that is just risky. Like even this is quite risky, but there are positive ideas here. Again, like I pointed out last time, Gala's got a really nice decline in supply at the moment, and you see some of the potential demand coming back into the market, really testing. But there was a huge amount of supply that came in here, more than I think the market maker originally intended, and it pushed us all the way back down to effectively the previous ranges of resistance, all the way from back into July 2020. So you can also see this gap here on the VPVR on the right-hand side. This gap, boom, that just a huge chunk was been trying to fill out there as a new cause for support. So I'd hoped we were actually going to build support above the POC instead, but we got thrown down right at that last minute. So not once this goes up, I'll close out the position and play with something stronger. There's a lot of early momentum in Gala here, but the market maker just kept getting hit with people tossing daily supply onto them. So they're like, well, fuck it, we'll back off then. So we'll wait for them to make their next campaign, but there's been other stronger positions we've been following. So Alluvium, Sand, Magic, Fetch, and Matic. Which one I will kind of take a stepping stone. I still think Gala could produce big, potentially huge moves here. Like Gala could go as high as 25 cents potentially. I'm not, again, don't bet on something like that. We're way too many steps away here. But if you see this kind of full extension of the step as Bitcoin goes to 40 grand, you could see a move up to 25 cents for Gala, maybe even 36 cents. But let's go one step at a time. The first step we need to do here is continue this path. And actually, I was looking at this earlier with one of the new. We're building an indicator package that we're going to give away. This will be one of the trend indicators. Get rid of this green line here. Yeah, so we're stuck below the 200-day moving average effectively, and been trying to get back above that. And it's a very nice downward trend line here for Gala that we're seeing. So I suspect this first step, getting back above the VPVR to 57 or 5.7 cents, could send us up as high as 12 cents. But again, if Bitcoin goes to the 50 grand, I think you could see full extensions of these things up into crazy territory. We're like 26 to maybe even 36 cents. So it's not out of the cards yet, but let's focus on where we are today before we look too far into the future. Awesome. Well, I'm just going to leave it at that today. It was a nice, basically, just a little under an hour. Which is perfect. We'll see you guys again in the next episode. I'll start to do more of these because I think it's going to become more exciting. The market's going to basically go up and up and up, and everyone's going to want to learn more. And all the people who sold will come back, and it'll be a wild ride for a little bit. So that's what we'll get into, and we'll see you guys again on the next episode.